Hello and welcome to the BucketLister Podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford, along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the BucketLister Podcast. Today we are welcoming back one of our legend guides, Dave Blower. Hello, Dave.
Hi, Keith. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. It's been a while since you were last on. It must be a couple of months now.
Well, I've been busy trekking.
You have done a few trips recently, and we're going to talk about one of those trips today. So you literally came back last week from our Sahara desert trek, and I just wanted to do a podcast today to talk through that trek, because I think actually it's probably one of my favourite trips to do.
Oh, yes, it's so different. When you first took me on that trek to familiarise me, you said this is going to be very different, Dave, and it certainly is, and I really enjoy doing it now.
I remember when we first looked at, the reason we put the Sahara trek in originally was because not everybody wants to go and climb a mountain. Like when we first started the Bucket List company, we were predominantly a trekking company, and all of our trips generally involved going uphill. So I wanted to put a trip in that went to somewhere really interesting, like Morocco, the Sahara Desert, but again, wasn't about going up and then coming back down again. I think we kind of really hit the nail on the head with that trip, didn't we? Oh,
yes. It is so different to what I'm used to doing for the company and what I enjoy doing. But it's just fantastic. The environment, the solid. Oh, I'll just go on and on. The solitude, the night sky. This is going to sound boring. The geology, incredible things that you see and experience there. It's just wonderful.
And in terms of, let's put this out there to start with, because most people, when they think of the Sahara Desert, they think they're going to be spending their whole time trekking through sand.
That's true. And what is a fact is around the world, 80% of deserts are in fact stony deserts. The technical term is the REG, R-E-G. And only 20%, 25% is actually the sand dunes that we recognise, the ERG, the ERG. So I think it is surprise from our clients when they think they're walking and say, "Where's the sand, Dave? Where's the sand?" Well, we're not going to get there for a couple of days. We're actually going to experience something else very different.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? People think they're going to start straight away, but actually we don't really see any sand for the first 2 days of the trek, really, do we?
No, on the second day you can see the dunes on the horizon, but actually we're walking through the Sahara Desert, and it's a stony desert, but it's still varied and it's still really interesting.
And Morocco as a country is an amazing country. I mean, I don't think we've done a Morocco podcast yet. I think we need to do a Toubkal one at some stage.
Of course.
That's probably one of our most popular trips we do, and we haven't actually discussed that on a podcast yet. But in terms of Morocco, I always explain Morocco itself is the biggest culture shock for the least amount of air miles.
That is so true. I'm just thinking about the variety of the trip. You go to Marrakesh. I mean, what a place! It's so foreign. There are the comforts of home there, but it is so foreign. It's so vibrant, exciting, colourful. Really, really rammed with people. Really interesting. And then you start to ride, for example, to the desert along long, straight roads. But first of all, through the Atlas Mountains. Incredible sights. You drive right through the centre of the Atlas Mountains and the Berber community that's there by the side of the road and living there and being enabled to live there by the king. And then on you go. And as you go on, you follow the Dra River Valley down towards the desert, and just miles and miles and miles of date palms following the valley. And then you get to the desert. And when you get to the desert, there were nomads, not pretend tourist nomads, but real nomads who were growing camels and baby camels and moving around and welcoming you into their tent. It's just, the contrasts are just amazing.
Yeah, because I think the thing with Morocco is, it takes you longer by plane from the UK to get to Lanzarote, Tenerife, the Greek islands, and actually, you go on those places and you have a lovely holiday. But going to Marrakesh or to Morocco is a completely different cultural holiday, I always think, compared to those other destinations.
Oh, it is. And, we always build in a city tour and go to the Bahia Palace. And the things that you learn in there about the history of the country, the architecture, and how people lived, and about harems, what they really were, about concubines, what they really were, not what we've got in our imagination. And you need to go and find out this stuff. And just how the Prime Minister and the King of the time actually lived. Beautiful, beautiful carvings. They're hundreds of years old, but just not faded in any way. And then the hustle and bustle of the Jewish quarter. It's just so much to experience. And of course, everyone knows about the main square, which is just a hive of entrepreneurial commerce trying to get you to eat something, buy something, see something.
I mean, the souks in the square in Marrakesh are one of the highlights for most people. And I think I just, as a business owner, I just love to see how they, you don't have 27 sports shops next to each other in the UK. But when you go to Marrakesh, there are 20 orange juice sellers who are all trying to get your 45 pence to get an orange juice, and they're all just next to each other. And you walk through the souks, and everyone, you go through the leather, it's in sections, isn't it? So you've got the leather section, you've got the metal section, and they're all selling the same bags. And it's just mind-blowing, really, how they actually manage to survive.
Well, it is mind-blowing, and they're all trying to inveigle you into buying something. But once you buy just one little thing, if you do want to, then there's always a conversation to be had about, how's your family, where are you from, which football team do you support? Yeah. You get all of that as well.
Cheaper than Asda is the general comment, isn't it? Yeah. And just quickly on Marrakesh, before we move on more to the trek, Dave, a lot of people think Marrakesh is a dangerous city. It's not safe. It's not safe for female travellers. How do you feel when you're in Marrakesh?
I think it is perfectly safe. I think the place that sort of freaks people out is the main square, but there were tourist police there dotted all around, and I've never seen any violence. I've never seen anyone attacked. I've never seen anybody accosted in a rough or physical way at all. So much so that when my daughter was just in her early 20s and she wanted to go there, I was absolutely confident she would not be in any way harassed or get into any trouble. It's vibrant, yes. It's noisy, yes. But aggression and threat, it's just not there. But it is noisy and it is very vibrant, and you do have to adapt to that.
Yeah, I think people get a bit freaked out with how many people are around. They're just going about their daily business. Like when you're going through the souks, yes, they will try and get you to come into their shops. But I think, they do understand, if you're polite to them and say, no, I'm not interested, then they just let you walk on by, don't they? It's not.
I just no thanks and carry on, and that's it. Yeah.
So we always have a couple of days in Marrakesh when we're on this trip as well. So in total, our Sahara trip's a 9-day trip in total. Now, the biggest part, I think, is the drive down to the desert, isn't it? Because when you stay in Marrakesh, as you walk through Marrakesh, people will be trying to sell you desert trips, which are a 3-hour drive. And personally, I don't think that's really going to the desert. I mean, our drive's kind of like, it's a full day's drive.
Yeah, 8 hours.
8 hours. In a really comfortable bus.
Yeah.
Like the transport is, you've got reclining leather chairs in your bus, like you can properly relax and chill out. But we actually go down into the depths of the Moroccan Sahara, don't we? I mean, we're literally you can see Algeria.
Yes, close to the Algerian border, really as far south as you can go in Morocco. And it feels like it. I mean, this last trek, we didn't see any other trekkers at all. Once we'd started, it was just us. And that isolation, I think, is one of the massive attractions. We're trekking with our 8 camels. There were 10 of us in total, walking through the desert until we found a tree on which to shade and have something gorgeous to eat, as always in Morocco. And then at night, camping really out in the wilderness and the stars. I mean, the Milky Way, this was absolutely incredible. The stars were out. You could see satellites going overhead. People, the clients, and me as well. I never get used to it. Just lying on our backs watching shooting stars. It was just amazing.
And on the transfer down to the Sahara,
yes,
because we go, we pretty much go all the way down to Mohammed, but we stop on the way, don't we? I think that's one of my favourite. I really like when we stop and have a wander around the film studios and do that part of the trek. Yes.
That is really interesting to see where Gladiator was filmed, Lawrence of Arabia, all those desert films have all been shot in the place that we go to. But there are also people, it's a UNESCO preserved settlement, there are people still living there, Berbers living in that community there. So it's not an artificial place. There is the artificial set, if you like, which blends in, but there are people still living there, still with animals underneath the main dwelling, and creating, as you watch, creating sand art and all sorts of artifacts, not imported from China, actually being made right in front of your face and sold for very little money, but gratefulness on both sides.
I remember when we were there in February, the guy showed us around and he took us into his house, didn't he?
Yes.
And he was showing us all the pictures of him in his costumes in the films. They do use them as extras, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, he was showing us him in Aladdin. He was showing what part he played in Gladiator. He was taking us, and they're so friendly in terms of, they want to show you. They want to explain.
And they're very proud. And why shouldn't they be proud of it? It's not a relationship whereby they're taken advantage of. It's very, very much symbiotic. They get something out of it.
So we normally stop there, then we go and have a lunch.
Lovely lunch.
In a hotel just down the road. Then we make our way then down to where we start the trek from. And we get there kind of normally at about dusk, and that we arrive down there.
Yes, it is. And I think there's some really interesting history to it with all of this, because we go down to a place called Sahara, which everyone can find on the map. But Sahara and the next town on, which is the one that we turned to, Mohammed, were the way stations for the camel trains right across the whole of the Sahara Desert through into Egypt, Mauritania, all those other places. So there's a massive cultural history as well. It's not just about the sand, the stars and camping. There's an awful lot to know about desert life as well. And we have a really good guide, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
Who explains all of that very carefully, a bit at a time for people who want to know. So we are actually trying to understand the culture in quite detail, not just rub along.
I remember in February when we took a trip and we were driving down on the first day, and we discovered it was one of the people who'd kept their birthday very quiet.
Yeah,
and they came to Dave and I. Sort of at lunchtime, and we're like, "Oh, it's so and so's birthday today." Like, they haven't mentioned it, and we bought them a postcard to give them as a birthday card. And they were like, "Can you try and get a cake?" And I was like, try and get a cake. Like we're in the middle of nowhere. Like the roads drive for miles. And I spoke to the guide and I said, look, is there any chance we can stop anywhere and get a cake? And we had quite a big group that trip.
So we did, it was full group.
There was about 18 of us.
Yes.
And he said, look, I've got to stop in a minute and we're going to stop and get some fresh bread. Like they might have some cakes in the shop. So we were like, oh, okay, great. So I went into the shop and the cakes, they didn't have any cakes, but they had smaller cakes and they had these really lovely, like custard tart.
Yes.
And I was like, I need 18 of these and I need to buy them for the guides. Like I'm going to need to buy like 22 of these to feed everybody. Like this is going to cost me a fortune because they were big like custard slices. Like
yes, they were massive.
Like you would get in a French patisserie really. So I thought, I'll get 22. And then they gave me the bill and it was £4.40. And you were like, wow. And then we pulled these out in the evening in the desert because no one had known we had got them. And it was like their last kind of sweet treat.
It was, yeah.
Before we did the trek, wasn't it? But, so we've got, obviously there's always one of us on a trek. Sometimes there's two of us, depending on the size of the group. Like we normally run the trips kind of February time, late October, November time is when it's cooler in the Sahara. Although this year it was kind of very hot for you when you were there last week. But there's always one of us that we've always then got our local guides as well, who are also our Toop Cow guides. So, we know the guides very well. We've been working with these guides a long time now. Then we have our cooks, and then we swap the muleteers to our camel tears when we do the Sahara trip. So we've got a fairly biggish team.
Yes.
That meet us there. And the food they cook is just...
Oh, it's amazing. Ali is a brilliant cook. And I want to give a shout out to the whole team really, because Ahmed, the head cameleer, he hasn't got much English whatsoever, but he just wants to join in all the time in the fun, in teasing people, in helping people. It's just wonderful. And our two guides, Mohammed and Hassan. Hassan's always walking behind people, zipping up their bags. They've forgotten something, or somebody's feeling a bit poorly, and he walks alongside, carries just a great team.
Remember when we did the February trip and someone had left their sunglasses at the last stop, and Hassan dropped his bag, ran back
in the desert
to get their sunglasses and bring them back to him. Like they were literally
miles back.
So first morning of the trek then. And it kind of surprises people a little bit because there is a little bit of a hill to walk up. It's probably the only one uphill apart from the dunes that you go up, isn't it?
Yes. Where we camp is, I think, strictly called the Pre-Sahara, and we climb a ridge. And it is the highest thing that we climb in the whole of the flat Sahara. We climb the ridge and people they look at it and think we can't do that. But of course, there's always a secret zigzag path, which is what we follow. You wouldn't know from a distance, but of course the guides know it, and we follow that. And then we get up, and from there we've for the first couple of days we more or less follow ancient, thousands of years old, dry riverbeds, even a dry waterfall, which we always take a picture at, worn smooth over millennia, and obviously about 10 millimeters of rain a year in the Sahara now. So this is a massive riverbed, and that's fascinating in itself, and unbelievably full of wildlife. There are little pools, I think, water from underground, and there are always frogs in them, aren't there?
Yeah.
Little frogs shouting their heads off.
Well, it's the only way that the nomadic people can still live in the Sahara, isn't it?
Yeah.
If they didn't have those water pools
for the camels to drink and
goats,
and we come across where they've dug the odd well. Although this year a number of them were dry, but the wells, and you get a chance to bucket up clean water from the Sahara and wash yourself in it. It's just a lovely experience. It's freezing cold.
So we're camping on the trip. So 2-man tents, and then we've got a dining tent as well.
Yeah,
which we have our breakfast in. We have our afternoon tea in when we get into camp.
Yes.
Have our dinner in there.
Yeah.
And then...
And we've got to be clear about this. The loos are loo tents with holes in the sand, really, and that's I don't know if that's an attraction for people or not, but it's certainly that's how it is, and everyone has got that in mind. It's going to be like that, and they do things they wouldn't do at home. Then I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we have improved that slightly.
Yes, we have.
The first time I ever did that trek, it was literally a hole in the. We have now taken toilets out to the.
Yes, there are some seats.
There are some seats to sit on now,
yes.
So you have a little bit of a throne. But if you dare to keep that toilet tent open whilst you're sat there in the morning. It is a poo with a view, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You're not going to beat it, really.
No, never.
And Dave, just talk about some of the other experiences that people get when they're on that trek. Because obviously, yes, they're trekking. Once the camels have started unloading once we're drinking the water, we're eating the food, we start to get a few camels become available. So people then can start having a camel ride across the desert. But then, things like the bread making, things like that.
Yeah. This trip, I've 3 times now, and every time we go, it's different. I remember, I want to talk about the first trip. We were in the middle of nowhere, near the sand dunes, sitting around a fire that we collected dead wood from, I think, the acacia bushes or something, at a fire, and 2 guys appeared from around the sand dune. There was nothing in sight, and one had one of those, I don't know what it's called. It's a stringed instrument, it's like one string really, and the other one had a little drum. And they came to the site, and the guides obviously had met them before, said hello, and they just sat down with us. And everyone was going off to bed. I remember that it was about. Oh, you know what it's like at about 8 o'clock.
8:30.
8:30, yeah. And they would go to bed, and then they just involuntarily started playing. And I think it's because they were with the guides and there was a fire, and I don't know where they came from at all, and I'm not joking about that. And they started playing. An hour later, they were still playing. Everyone is out of the tents. People dancing around the fire with sort of gay abandon, really. And for me, I thought, well, this is put up. But it wasn't. The guy said, no, they're just walking. They're walking through the desert. They live here somewhere, nomads, and they saw the fire, and they've walked a mile, come to us, and they've started to play.
It was when the cooks came out with the saucepan lids and started joining in.
That's right. Well, this time, just an equivalent. I've got more to say yet. There are 3 cameleers. I've told you about Ahmed, always wants to join in with things. Anyway, we were sitting around a campfire that we'd made, and they'd obviously done their business. And they put the camels down, and that's an interesting sight to see how they feed the camels and how they keep them from. There's always a rogue camel who wants to get away. Anyway, they came out, and they had 3 water carriers, and between them they did this syncopated drumming and then started singing. It was amazing, really. And I think the most amazing thing was, at the end of it, Ahmed, the cameleer, turned to one of our guides, and both our guides speak English, Hassan, and said, "Oh, do the clients have they got any folk songs like we've just sung?" And I felt so embarrassed. I mean, what folk songs do we know, and what do we? Because it's part of their culture, what do we sing? So somebody said, "Oh, I know Come By Our." So there we were singing. I guess it's a Christian song, Come By Our, very simply, or two of the women beautifully. I joined in because I've got to, because I'm a leader, but I can't sing. So I joined in where I could. And then the cameleers were singing Come By Our, and I just thought we've got Muslim cameleers here singing a Christian song around a fireplace. So that's the sort of thing that happens. On a completely different theme, when the bonfire's over, out comes a load of flour and water that's been mixed up into a very simple dough, no yeast in it. The ashes are pulled aside, and the only word I can use is flomp. It's flomped into the hot sand, and ashes and sand pulled over the top. 10 minutes later, and you can't believe this, the sand is pulled aside, and out comes a massive disc of bread. It's got no sand in it. That's a bit I can't believe ever. It's no sand in it. It's baked. It's crusty.
It's not burnt.
It's not burnt.
It's not black.
It's not black. It's not charred. It doesn't taste of charcoal or burning or anything. It's beaten off, and then we're all given a piece of this hot bread. That's happened, I think, 3 times, every time now. Once in an oven, but twice in the sand. And that's the bit I wait for, really, because I still can't believe that thing is not full of sand. And it's absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous bread. A simple flatbread. Big, a great big thing, like a massive lorry hubcap, really. It's a huge thing. So that's another thing that happens. And I mentioned it before, all this to the accompaniment, once the fire dies down, of looking up and seeing shooting stars, what else could I say? The experiences just go on. And of course, sometimes the nights are cold, but 2 or 3 times I've been now, you're sitting there, you're warm, you're around a fire, the whole group has bonded, and you included. You're all getting on really well, and everyone is part of it. There's not an us and them. The cameleers, the guides, the cook, we're all sitting around together and just enjoying it and having fun. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, and obviously, all of our food has to be carried. There's nowhere to stop on the way.
No.
I always remember the time. I think it was the first time we went out there together that we asked where Hassan had gone.
Oh, yes.
And the reply was, Hassan's gone to get dinner. And then next minute he came running down with a baby goat over his back because, obviously they can't carry meat for days in the desert. And, they are providing an income for these Berber families that are out living in the desert. He just went up to one of them and bought a goat, and
they did the rest of it.
It was
and it was delicious too. I know that vegetarians and vegans won't like hearing that, but for a meat eater, it was delicious. But I've got to say this: the vegetarian, I wouldn't even call it an option. What we all get, the vegetarian food that we get as well, it's just gorgeous.
There's plenty of water, fresh bottled water.
Always, that's free, on demand. If you need it, it's there. You haven't got to carry it all day because at lunchtime, it comes off the camel's back, and there you are, another bottle to carry with you. And we certainly needed it this time. It was very hot, but everyone had plenty of water.
Just one quick thing. Obviously, we're using camels to carry all of our kit, to carry our bags. And obviously, people are only carrying their day pack. Their duffel bags are going on the camel. One thing that I'm always amazed at is how well the camels are looked after. They are tools to their, but they really do care for these camels, don't they?
They do. And just to make a reference now, it's like the tube cow trip where we use mules. The muleteers understand, as do the cameleers, that if their animal is badly treated, it will not be able to do the job it's meant to do. And they can't, they're so expensive now, these animals, to buy, because they do have to buy them or trade for them, that they are really properly looked after. And I've got an image from when we last went. Ahmed was with us on the last day, and by then we only had 2 camels with us. The other 5 or 6 had gone on ahead, taking on the tents and all the rest of it. And we had 2 camels on the last day because people were a bit tired by then, and we offered people a ride on the camel. And I remember when we stopped for lunch, the camels were down on their knees, so relaxed. They weren't tied up or anything. And Ahmed Camelier was leaning against one, on its neck, just leaning there, and he was eating his lunch. And the camel, just like a dog really, a pet dog, was leaning across trying to eat his lunch. And I remember him just tapping its nose, like, oh, don't do that. And this camel's, and carrying on eating. And obviously a relationship there, and I think if you're with camels, like any animal, I suppose, long enough, you can see it's not just a beast of burden. I think that's a kind of really cruel term. They're actually treasured, and they're known, and they've got names as well. I couldn't pronounce any of the names, but they've all got names, and they all respond differently. And the cameliers know that, and like I said, he's sort of cuddled up to it, really, eating his lunch.
It's always when one tries to do that little escape in it.
There's always one.
And they go chasing after it. It becomes a joke. Like they're like, they come back and they're like, naughty camel. But it's not. When you see in some countries, they'll beat the animal. And it's we would never. Work with companies that did that anyway. But it is, they're just laughing and joking about it. There's no.
Oh, this year, every year's a great group. But this great group I just come back with, I'll give them a call out now. We're always commenting on the naughty camel, because there's one, and it's usually a teenage camel who doesn't want to be hanging out with the older ones, and tries to make its way into the sand dunes or break away at some point or other. And the sight of a cameleer running across the desert, calling to a camel, then chiding it and bringing it back, but it's only words.
And we get to camp at the bottom of Erdchegger, which is the highest sand dune in the Moroccan Sahara. It's a bit of a climb to get back up, isn't it? Yes, it is.
I've had some fun this year with that. Everyone goes up there and we see the sunset. And this has happened on, what's this, the third or fourth time? I can't remember. Every time it's happened, the sun has gone down, but the clients don't want to come down. Everyone seems to when they get to the top, they seem to get lost in what they can see in front of them, which is that desert just going on. You're in the highest dune, going on and on in front of them, and seeing the sun go down. And it is, this sounds corny, but it is magical. Really.
And once the sun's down, the colours just change.
Changing. It goes from sort of yellowy to gold, and then you get red in the sky and blue. And that's happened every time, so it's not a freak. It's not a freak. And we always try and build a little bit of excitement, don't we, at the end of that, because people want to walk down. But as everyone probably knows, every sand dune's got a gradual side to it and a very steep side, extremely steep side. And we invite people, if they want to run down the steep side. And it is steep, to run down the steep side. And did the same. You weren't there with me this year, because we always try to lead that, don't we? But I had somebody run down with me this year. Complaining. She did complain that she had to then climb back up again. But it was a great fun.
And the thing that always surprises me is you get phone signal in the Sahara Desert.
Yeah. 4 bars.
4G. It's... Yeah. People can have a FaceTime call on top of these dunes. And they're showing their family what they're seeing. And I know for some people they don't want to have their phone with them. I understand that, but for some people they do want to.
They want to share. They want to share. I include myself in that. The first time I was really excited, and that's all I wanted to do was to show my wife where I was, not for the sake of showing off, but I want you to see this, what I'm seeing, because it is so moving.
Yeah.
Not that it is, it just is,
And in terms of a trip, this is probably one of the easiest ones from kit-wise, isn't it? You don't need hardly any specialist kit for this one.
No. Stout trail shoes, not flimsy trainers, I would say. Stout trail shoes for your feet. You do need a pair of socks every day, absolutely, because feet are if anything's going to suffer, it's going to be your feet because of the heat. But other than that, really, really good sun cream. A really good sun cream, definitely light tops, and you do need to be carrying something warm for the nights. Although this time we were lying on our sleeping bags, we didn't need that. But everyone managed to sleep, so it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, but apart from a sleeping bag, mats are provided.
Yep.
Normal everyday trekking clothes and a duffel bag, and there's
you're done.
You're done, aren't you?
Yeah, you are done. Yeah, it's the lightest trekking bag I take.
I mean, in terms of what you have in your bag, is there one thing that you're glad you always take with you on this trip?
Yes. Wet wipes. Because there are some pools, and you could, if you had biodegradable soap or shampoo, you could rinse yourself off with those. And there was this time a well where we were able to do that. But at the end of everything gets very dusty, a very dusty wet day. Wet wipes are brilliant. Put them in a plastic bag and I dispose of them properly when I get back to Marrakesh. Obviously, we don't leave them in the desert or put them in a hole because some have got plastics in them. Although the new ones you could have not. Yeah, wet wipes. I'd say that's a saver.
And what do you think? What would you say to anybody that's listening to this podcast thinking that does sound like a good trip? What would you say to them?
I would say this: if you can walk for 2 hours at a stretch, because then you're going to stop, and you're not intolerant to a bit of heat, then just do it. Just do it. I think what I would say is this: I'm not saying you definitely come with us. I'm not saying that, but don't think doing a 2-day trip to the desert is the desert. It is absolutely not. When you wake up in the morning in the proper desert, you will see, when you're walking, tracks where lizards have run, where non-poisonous snake has slithered along the sand dune. You'll see sometimes, I think twice now, away from the tent because they don't like noise, where a scorpion has run. You won't see that on a 2-day blast around just south of the Atlas Mountains. You've got to get into the desert for that. And that's just one example, apart from all the other things I've talked about. And certainly no nomad is going to slip out of behind a sand dune and sit around your campsite with you on just a 2-day pop into the desert.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing about this trip, isn't it? Is the fact that actually we are we've done this trip 4 or 5 times now. I've never seen another group of trekkers on this trip.
No, that's absolutely right. Absolutely right. You're out there, safe. You got communications. You've got good guides, but you're out there on your own as a group, and that creates a real camaraderie as well. And
you talk about being safe. I mean, can you remember when we had trucks driving past us?
Yeah. One of the things is we do go close to the Algerian border, and the Moroccans have a very discreet border patrol, white trucks, and you spot them. You're walking along, you say, "Oh, what's that behind the dune?" And then it disappears, and they're just very discreetly watching you to make sure that you're okay. And they're obviously watching the border as well, which is some miles away. But they're making sure that you're safe. And the other thing is, the nomads know where you are. They all know. You're in the middle of nowhere, and there's a guy with full Arab dress, face covered, walking along, and hi, the guys talk to him. Oh, I'm off looking for my 18 camels. I've been walking half a day. I saw you a day ago when I was. Oh, did you?
Well, and the best one is when you're walking along and suddenly there's a couple of young girls sat there and they've got their stall out selling their their handicrafts that they've made. That's real commitment, isn't it? They're not going to see many people.
No. They see us, I brought back some lovely gifts this year from that because it's going to help them with their education and all sorts, really.
Well, Dave, thanks ever so much for coming on. Before we finish the podcast, we always ask all our guests, what's still on your bucket list?
Well, I'm looking forward to the next trek, actually. It's a first for us, going to Jordan and seeing Petra and the Dead Sea. And some of that is because I'm such an old boy. My dad was in WW2, and he was with the desert rats as they went through North Africa, and he talked to me a lot about the Sea of Galilee, the Dead Sea, and going to these places like Syria. And it's been in my imagination for a long, long time. So I'm really looking forward to that in the next couple of weeks because it's a first for us, and it's definitely a first for me, and it's got some really deep meaning for me as well.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear from you in a couple of weeks' time and back on the podcast talking about that. Well, thanks ever so much for coming on, Dave. It's been a pleasure to talk about the Sahara. I was in Gozo last week, so I couldn't come on to this one with you, but we still had a great time in Gozo. Anyway, thanks ever so much for listening. Hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I'll put a link in the show notes to the trip itself, so you can go and have a look at the Sahara Desert Trek and just see actually if it is for you. So hopefully again you've enjoyed it. Catch you next week. And please, please, please do like and subscribe to the podcast and give us a nice 5-star review as well, because that really does help. Anyway, thanks ever so much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the BucketLister Podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.